That day, the steps of the pyramid were wet. Not because of rain, but because people were being taken up there, one after another. The year was 1487. The place was what we now call Mexico, near present-day Mexico City. Long before this became a modern city, it was the heart of the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs were one of the most powerful civilizations in ancient Mesoamerica. They had armies, kings, cities, and at the center of their capital stood a massive pyramid temple. But this is important. An Aztec pyramid was not like the pyramids of Egypt. Egyptian pyramids were often built to hold the bodies of dead pharaohs. Aztec pyramids were different. They were raised platforms, altars, stages, places built high enough for the whole city to see. At the top, there were temples. At the bottom, there was the plaza. And between them, a steep staircase. Captives were pushed up those steps, one step at a time, higher and higher, until they reached the center of everyone's gaze. The priests stood above. The king and nobles were present. Soldiers were present. The crowd was present. Everyone watched as a person was taken up. And then that person's death became more than death. It became a performance for the gods, and a performance for the people. It told everyone watching, who stands at the top? Who is allowed to hold the knife? Who gets to say, this is what the gods want? And who is only allowed to stand below and watch? That is what made the Aztec pyramids so terrifying. It was not just a building. It was a machine that tied religion, war, and imperial power together. That year, the great temple had been rebuilt, higher than before, more magnificent than before. And on that day, the steps were wet. Captives were lined up in a long row. One person went up, then the next, then the next. They were offered to the gods, because the Aztecs believed that without blood, the sun might not rise again. To us, that sounds impossible. How could anyone believe that killing a person could keep the sun in the sky? But to them, this was not random violence. It was official, sacred, and supported by the state. How many people died? Later accounts claimed the number was in the tens of thousands, but many modern scholars believe those numbers were probably exaggerated. The true number may never be known, but one thing is not in doubt. This was not a massacre that suddenly got out of control. It was a system organized by the state, performed by priests, and watched by the people. This was not one madman picking up a knife. This was an entire civilization believing that this was right. We want to tell ourselves this is their story, something distant, savage, unrelated to us. But the truth is not that comfortable, because this did not happen only among the Aztecs. More than 3,000 years ago, in northern China, there was a kingdom called Shang. Its core region was around what is now Anyang, in Henan province. The Shang also killed war captives and offered them to their ancestors. In North Africa, in what is now Tunisia, there was once a powerful city called Carthage. Archaeologists have found many small urns there. Inside were the cremated remains of infants. Some scholars believe these remains may be connected to child sacrifice. Others argue that some may have been children who died naturally. The debate still exists, but either way, the image is hard to look away from. In what is now Peru, along the western coast of South America, archaeologists have also found children and captives who appear to have been sacrificed. In Europe, in Africa, across the Pacific Islands, you can find traces of the same idea. So this is not the dark chapter of one people. This is the dark chapter of humanity. Welcome back. I'm Angel. The images we just looked at feel far away. Aztec pyramids, Shang sacrifice pits, Carthaginian urns filled with the ashes of children. Our first reaction is usually, How cruel, how barbaric. Thank God that was not us. But if you keep looking, the story becomes much more uncomfortable. Because these people were not simply losing control in the middle of the night. They were not just mobs going mad. They had priests, kings, dates, rules, procedures, and crowds watching. In their world, killing was not always a crime. Sometimes, killing was a ritual, something allowed, arranged, and made sacred. That is the truly frightening part. Not that humans once killed each other, but that humans once turned killing into something right. If you won a war, you could kill captives and offer them to your ancestors. If drought destroyed your crops, you could kill someone and ask for rain. If you feared the sun might not rise again, you could offer a human heart to the gods. If you wanted your people to fear you, you could turn the altar into a stage. So today, the real question is not, how cruel were ancient people? The real question is, how far does a society have to go before it believes that killing one person can protect everyone? And how far does it have to go before it finally admits that was not sacred, that was murder? If human sacrifice had only happened among the Aztecs, we could tell ourselves that was one extreme empire in the Americas. If it had only happened in the Shang dynasty, we could say that was another distant civilization. If it had only happened in Carthage, we could say that was one unusual belief from ancient North Africa. But that is not what happened. The traces of human sacrifice are not a single line. They are more like a web. From East Asia to the Mediterranean, from Mesoamerica to Africa, from ancient European tribes to islands in the middle of the Pacific. If you go far enough back in time, you find many different human societies arriving at the same place, before an altar, before a blade, before fire. A living person is brought before everyone, and the crowd believes his death is not just death. His death has a purpose. In some places, sacrifice frightened enemies. In some places, it asked for rain. In some places, it honored ancestors. In some places, it proved that the king had been chosen by the gods. The forms were different, the names were different, the gods were different, but the center was often the same. A human life was traded for something bigger: victory, harvest, order, safety, a story that everyone could believe in. So human sacrifice was not simply primitive. It was not just barbaric. The terrifying thing is that it once made sense. At least, it was made to sound sensible inside those societies. It was written into rules, placed inside rituals, approved by kings, performed by priests, watched by the people, and eventually accepted by the whole society. That is what makes it so disturbing. Human beings really can turn killing into order. Before we go further, we need to separate three things. The first is burial sacrifice. This means that when a king, noble, or powerful person died, people around him were buried with him. Servants, soldiers, warriors, slaves. The belief was that after death, the ruler would go to another world, and these people were sent with him to continue serving him there. In simple words, burial sacrifice sends living people into the grave to follow the dead. The second is cannibalism. Cannibalism means eating the human body. Some societies really did practice it, sometimes because of war, sometimes because of hatred, sometimes because they believed that eating an enemy could give them his strength. But this is not the same as human sacrifice. Human sacrifice does not always involve eating the body. In many cases, the body was not eaten at all. The center of human sacrifice is this: a living person is killed, and that death is offered to a god, an ancestor, or some unseen power. So the difference is this: burial sacrifice sends someone to follow the dead. Cannibalism consumes the body. Human sacrifice offers death as a gift. That is what makes it so frightening. It is not only murder. It is murder turned into an exchange. I give you one life, you give me rain. You give me victory. You give me crops. You give me the protection of my ancestors. You give me a reason to believe the world can still be safe. So the next question is, why did human beings ever believe that one life could be the price? Why did ancient people kill other people as offerings? Was it simply because they were cruel? Not entirely. Behind human sacrifice, there were often deeper things: fear, hatred, power, survival, and one extremely dangerous idea. If I sacrifice one person, maybe I can save many more. The first reason was victory. In ancient war, winning was not always enough. Some people believed the dead ancestors also needed to know, so captives were killed and offered to them. It was like saying, "Look, we won, you protected us, so we have brought you the spoils." The second reason was warning. Sometimes human sacrifice was not only about the gods. Sometimes it was about terrifying the living. If a king brings captured enemies before the crowd and kills them, he is not only killing those people, he is telling everyone else, "Do not resist me. Do not betray me. Do not become my enemy, or this will be your end too." So sometimes sacrifice looked like religion, but it also worked like intimidation. The altar was not only for the gods, it was also for human eyes. The third reason was rain, harvest, and disaster. This one is easier to understand. If the sky refuses to rain, if crops die, if children begin to starve, if disease spreads again and again, people become desperate. And when people are desperate, one thing becomes unbearable: the feeling that there is nothing they can do. So ancient people asked, are the gods angry? Are the ancestors unsatisfied? Do we need to pay a greater price? Some societies offered animals. Others went further. They offered a human being, because a human life was the heaviest thing they could imagine. The fourth reason was power. This is the coldest one, because some sacrifices were not only about fearing the gods, they were about making the people fear the ruler. Who gets to decide whether a person should die? Who gets to say, "This is not murder, this is what the gods want"? The answer was usually not ordinary people. It was kings, priests, nobles, people with power. So human sacrifice was not always the cry of the weak. Sometimes it was the theater of the strong. They used one person's death to tell everyone, "My power does not come only from people, it comes from the gods." The fifth reason was story. Because human beings do not only need rituals, human beings also need stories. In Mesoamerica, sacrifice was not always just killing someone. Often it was wrapped inside myth. In Maya civilization, there was an important story called the hero twins. The twins descended into the underworld. They were tricked, killed, but eventually they returned and defeated the forces below. The story was tied to the sun, the moon, maize, and the renewal of life. You can think of it as an ancient script. Death is not the end. Death can lead to rebirth. Death can make the world start again. But here, we have to be careful. Maya ball games did not always end in death. Most of the time, they could be games, competitions, noble entertainment, even something children imitated in their own villages. But in certain places, the ball game could become something else. If the court was large, if it stood in the center of the city, if pyramids and temples were nearby, if the walls showed images of decapitation, blood, snakes, and plants growing from the body, then the court was not just a sports field. It could be a ritual stage. The game was not only about winning or losing. It could be a drama that had already been arranged. Players came onto the court. The crowd watched. Nobles were present. Priests were present. And the ending may already have been decided. Not every loser died. Not every winner was safe. Sometimes the players may have already been captives. The game simply gave their death a story, a structure, a place inside myth. So we cannot say, Maya ballgame equals decapitation sacrifice. A more accurate way to say it is, sometimes the ballgame was sport, sometimes it was ritual, and in certain highly sacred, highly political moments, it became a performance that tied together play, myth, power, and death. That is what makes human sacrifice so frightening. It can hold many things: victory, hatred, hunger, power, myth, heroes, even a story that sounds like rebirth. It touched the most vulnerable parts of human beings. We fear disaster. We want to control the world. We want to punish enemies. We want to prove we are right. And we want to believe that if we pay a price heavy enough, the world might become whole again. And the most terrifying part is this. For a very long time, many people truly believed that a human life was that price. When we hear the words human sacrifice, we may imagine a sudden killing. People panic, lose control, grab someone, and kill them. But the truly frightening part is different. Many times, it was not chaos. It was a process. Let's look at the first person.
Step forward.
He has no name. All we know is that he may have been a war captive. More than 3,000 years ago, the Shang Kingdom in northern China was at war. When the war ended, someone won, someone lost. The winners returned to the city. The losers were tied up and taken away. For this captive, maybe he thought he had simply been captured. Maybe he would be imprisoned, maybe enslaved, maybe exchanged. But in Shang society, captives sometimes went somewhere else. Not a prison, a sacrifice pit. He was placed inside a ritual system. The king needed to honor the ancestors. The priest needed to arrange the rite. Someone needed to divine the date. Someone needed to kill. Someone needed to record the act on bone. That bone might record the day, the ancestor, the number of people used, but it would not record who this captive had been. It would not record whether he had a family. It would not record whether he was afraid. Inside that system, he was no longer treated as a whole person. He became a number, a sacrifice, a body assigned to a ritual. That is what I mean by a production line. Not because they had factories, but because killing had been placed into a process. Capture, sort, move, kill, bury, record, next, and next, and next. Now turn the camera back to the Americas, Central Mexico, the Aztec capital. Before that enormous pyramid temple stands another captive. He also has no name. He may have been taken in war. He stands in line. There are people ahead of him, people behind him. He looks up and sees the pyramid. He sees the priest above. He sees people going up and not coming down on their own. The most terrifying part is not only that he will die.
He realized those
it is that
people
his
hadn't
death
walked
will
back
not
on their
happen
own.
in secret. It will happen in public. Nobles will see it. Soldiers will see it. Ordinary people will see it. Because this death was meant to be seen. Change the language and the whole event changes. Killing becomes offering. A body becomes a sacrifice. Fear becomes sacred. Now look at a third place, Carthage, a powerful ancient city near the Mediterranean, in what is now Tunisia. Archaeologists found many small urns there. Inside were the cremated remains of infants. This is still debated. Some scholars believe these remains are connected to child sacrifice. Others argue that some may have been children who died naturally. So we cannot simply say every urn contains a murdered child. But even without making the strongest claim, the image is already disturbing. Because what you see is not one child's story. You see rows of small urns, placed carefully, arranged, buried, kept inside a religious space. This is the real point of this chapter. The most frightening thing about human sacrifice is not only that someone died. It is that before that person died, society had already prepared a place for him. Someone decided he was a sacrifice. Someone decided who he would be offered to. Someone decided what his death would mean. Someone brought him there. Someone watched it happen. And someone recorded it. When sacrifice becomes a process, the person slowly disappears. His name disappears. His home disappears. His fear disappears. His cry for help disappears. In the end, only one identity remains: sacrifice. And this explains why human sacrifice could last for so long. It was not only cruel. It once worked. It made people afraid. It made people obey. It made rulers look chosen by the gods. And it allowed the living to believe. Once the sacrifice is offered, we will be safe. But here is the problem. If human sacrifice once worked, why did it begin to collapse? At first, human sacrifice looked like worship. But if you look deeper, you find something more terrifying. Human sacrifice was not only religion, it was power. Because not everyone could say, the gods want a life. And not everyone could decide who must be offered. Usually, only a few people had that authority: kings, high priests, nobles, and those standing close to them. They did something very clever and very frightening. They locked up the will of the gods. Then they told everyone, only I can understand the gods. Only I know when the gods are angry. Only I know who must be offered. You cannot ask, you cannot object, because you are not objecting to me. You are objecting to the gods. That is the most terrifying part of human sacrifice. It turned killing from one human killing another into doing work for the gods. If a king wanted to kill an enemy, he could say, "This is not me killing him, the god wants him." If a priest wanted to remove someone who disobeyed, he could say, "This person offended the gods." If a ruler wanted to frighten everyone, he could build the altar higher, make the ritual bigger, and let everyone see who stands above, who kneels below, who holds the knife, and who can become the sacrifice. At first, the altar ate enemies, so people felt safe. Then the altar ate captives. People could still pretend it had nothing to do with them. Then the altar ate criminals, slaves, the weak, the unprotected. And that is when people began to understand. The altar does not only eat outsiders. The altar eats whoever cannot fight back. And what if one day that becomes me? What if I owe a debt? What if I anger a noble? What if someone says I offended the gods? What if my child is chosen? Once that question appears, human sacrifice begins to turn against itself. It was supposed to create safety. Now it creates fear. It was supposed to prove the king was protected by the gods. Now it proves the king can be terrifying. It was supposed to show that society had order. Now it shows that the weakest people can be sacrificed at any time. This was especially clear in the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs were powerful. They had a capital, an army, priests, and a massive pyramid temple. They believed the sun needed human blood, so they went to war, captured people, brought them back to the capital, and took them up the altar. To the Aztecs, this helped sustain the world. But to the city-states they prosecuted, it was not sacred. It was humiliation, fear, hatred. Because the people taken away were not abstract sacrifices. They were brothers, children, relatives. The Aztecs saw it as, we are offering victims to the sun. But the conquered peoples saw it as, you are feeding our people to your gods. Every time the altar burned, the empire thought it was becoming stronger. But the hatred around it was also growing deeper. Those conquered cities obeyed on the surface. They gave food, goods, people, but inside, many of them were waiting for a chance to bite back. Then, that chance came. Strangers arrived from across the sea. They were not gods, they were not saviors. They were foreign conquerors. But many peoples oppressed by the Aztecs chose to stand with those outsiders, not because they loved the outsiders, but because they hated the Aztecs so much. That is the coldest reversal. The Aztecs thought human sacrifice was feeding the sun, but it was also feeding hatred. They thought the altar protected the empire, but every sacrifice made another city want to see that empire fall. No god threw lightning from the sky. No flood came to wash the pyramid away. The real punishment was human. The way you treat people is how they remember you. Rule through fear, and fear becomes hatred. Kill in the name of the gods, and those who lost their loved ones will wait for the day your gods can no longer save you. That is how human sacrifice began to turn against itself. It started as a tool of rule. Then it became a crack inside the ruler's own foundation. A small village may hold itself together through fear of a shared enemy, but a large city cannot. An empire cannot. A world of strangers who need to work, trade, obey, and live together cannot survive on the idea that at any moment someone can say, "The gods want a life." That kind of world needs stable rules, not an altar that can eat anyone. So human sacrifice was not simply defeated by kindness. It was not because humans suddenly became civilized. It was defeated by itself. In small societies, it could act like glue. In large societies, it became explosives. Law was more stable than the altar. Taxes were more stable than captives. Bureaucracy was more stable than one priest's voice. Symbolic rituals were cheaper and safer than real killing. So humanity slowly did one thing. It removed the human being from the altar. Animals, clay figures, dolls, symbols. The ritual remained, the power remained, but living people could no longer keep dying. The biggest problem with human sacrifice was not that it was not frightening enough. It was that it was too frightening. So frightening that, in the end, even rulers could not bear the cost. Later, many societies slowly stopped sacrificing living people. But here's the important question. When humans came down from the altar, did the story end? No. The person disappeared, but the altar remained, the drums remained, the procession remained. The king still stood in the highest place. The priest still knew when to speak. The crowd still stood below and watched. Only the thing being killed changed. Animals, clay figures, wooden dolls, paper effigies, symbolic offerings. You can think of it as a massive change of props. Before, the stage held a living person. Later, it held an animal.
To witness.
Later still, it held a human-shaped figure, or a symbolic object. But the meaning of the performance did not fully change. It still told everyone who stands at the center, who gives the command, who has the right to speak to the gods for everyone, who must kneel and watch, who is not even allowed to come close. That is the power of ritual. It does not only say, "I am the king, I am the priest, I have been approved by the gods." It shows you. You see the king walking forward. You hear the priest begin to speak. You see everyone fall silent. You see music, firelight, processions, costumes, banners. You may not understand every word, but you feel it. This person matters. This place is sacred. This cannot be opposed. Human sacrifice once used the most terrifying method to perform power. But as killing living people became harder to accept, rulers did not give up the performance. They changed the version. No more living human victims. Kill animals instead. No more real people buried with the dead. Use clay figures instead. No more offering the human body. Use dolls, paper figures, and symbols in place of the person who once might have died. So humanity did not throw ritual away overnight. It slowly removed the blood, removed the blade, removed the living person. But the stage remained. The human being disappeared from the altar, but the ritual refused to leave. From human sacrifice to bloodless ritual, the line was not completely broken. At one end of the line, a living person was offered. At the other end, we find state ceremonies, religious festivals, ancestor rites, and coronations. Cleaner, more civilized. No corpses, no screaming, no blood running down the steps. But these rituals still do part of the same work. They perform power. They perform obedience. They place the idea inside people's minds. This person has the right to rule you. So when humans disappeared from the altar, power did not disappear. Power simply learned a smarter method. It no longer needed to kill you to make you bow. It no longer needed blood on the altar to make everyone believe. Those above belong above. I do not want to give you a clean ending. Human sacrifice did not disappear in one day. It was pushed out of the public square by law, religion, modern states, and a growing refusal to accept it. But pushed away does not mean gone. It could no longer stand in the plaza. It could no longer be hosted by kings. It could no longer be called sacred. So it retreated into remote places, closed rooms, rumors. In the past, human sacrifice could be public. Priests, drums, processions, witnesses. In the modern world, it becomes a short line in the news. A missing child, a murdered woman, a vulnerable person said to have been killed for ritual purposes. We no longer call it sacrifice. We call it ritual murder. Remove sacred and there is no glory left. No God, no cosmic order, no great exchange. Only killing. But modern stories are dangerous in another way. We cannot say every missing person was sacrificed. We cannot say every sudden death hides a ritual. Strictly speaking, human sacrifice means a living person is selected, killed, and offered to a god. But online, something else can happen. Not human sacrifice itself, the position of the sacrifice. A missing person can become the place where fear gathers. A blank space can become an altar. Gabriela Rico Jimenez shows this clearly. Not because her case has been proven to be a sacrifice. It has not. But because it shows how far the internet can turn fear into a script. In 2009, Gabriela appeared outside a hotel in Monterrey, Mexico. She screamed in the street. She said she wanted freedom. She made terrifying claims. She named powerful people. Then police took her away. After that, she disappeared from public view. That blank space became the story. Years later, when Epstein-related files returned to public attention, the internet connected the two. People said Gabriela was not crazy. They said she knew too much. But that connection has not been confirmed by a court or law enforcement agency. The public files do not officially connect Gabriela to the Epstein case. There is no legal proof that her claims about cannibalism were true. So we cannot say she exposed modern human sacrifice. We cannot say she was definitely silenced. The real question is different. Why does one breakdown, one disappearance, and one new batch of files become one complete story so quickly? Because the story contains modern fears, power, silencing, exploitation, disappearance, abuse, cannibalism. A person swallowed by darkness. Once those elements appear, the internet does not always wait for evidence. The story begins to feed itself. Gabriela stops being only a woman outside a hotel. She becomes a role. The woman swallowed by power. The woman whose silence proves the world is worse than we imagined. That is the power of the sacrificial position. The ancient altar needed a body. Modern dark narratives often need a missing person to stand in that place. She may not be a sacrifice, but the story needs her to resemble one. The same logic appears around sudden death. In 2025, Chinese actor Yu Menglong died after falling from a building in Beijing. Officials described it as an accidental fall and ruled out a criminal case. His family asked the public not to keep speculating. But the case did not become quiet. Some people claimed abuse. Some called it sacrifice. Some brought in cannibalism and dark rituals. The most extreme claims have not been confirmed by a court, law enforcement, or any public autopsy. So we cannot treat them as fact. What matters is how the rumor grows. A person dies. The explanation is not trusted. Before the answers arrive, so let's return to the first question. Why did human beings sacrifice people? Because for a very long time, humans believed that killing one person could buy something. Rain, harvest, victory in war, protection from ancestors, the sun rising again, the illusion that the gods were on their side. But sacrifice was not only destructive, it was power. Because whoever could decide the sacrifice held the most frightening authority. Whoever could say, the god wants a life, could turn killing into sacred duty. Whoever stood at the altar could show everyone, I am not an ordinary person. I am the one who speaks to the gods. So human sacrifice once worked. It frightened people. It made them obey. It made rulers look chosen. And it allowed the living to believe. Once that person is offered, we will be safe. But in the end, it turned against itself. Because a growing society cannot live on fear alone. Cities need trust. Trade needs trust. Law needs trust. Parents need to believe their children will come home tomorrow. The weak need to believe they will not be pushed forward as the next price for disaster. Human sacrifice destroys that. It plants the same question inside everyone. Today it is him. Tomorrow, will it be me? So human sacrifice did not end simply because humans suddenly became good. It did not end because humanity became civilized overnight. It ended because it was too dangerous, too unstable, too good at turning fear into hatred, too easy for rulers to use the gods as a way to jump over every rule. Eventually, human beings found more stable tools. Law instead of the altar. Taxes instead of captured victims. Bureaucracy instead of a priest's single sentence. Animals, clay figures, dolls, and symbols instead of living people. The ritual did not disappear. Power did not disappear. The human being was simply removed from the altar. Today, we almost never call these things sacrifice anymore. We call them murder, ritual killing, crime. That difference in language took humanity thousands of years to learn. No god is worth another person's life, and no ruler should ever be allowed to say, for the good of everyone, you can die. Human sacrifice was not defeated by morality. It was defeated by itself. Because when the altar eats people, it also eats trust. It eats law. It eats the city. It eats the very ground the ruler is standing on. Thank you for being here, for listening, for caring about a story the world tried to silence. If this video touched something in your heart, subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss what comes next. Drop a comment, let me know you're here. because every voice matters, and yours is one of them. I'm Angel. May the light be with you.